This video chart presentation of BG Medicine Inc. It's a NASDAQ listed stock trading ticker BGMD. This chart's already made a nice move, which is a little bit different than charts we normally look at, but I wanted to point out a couple different patterns that were going on before this stock took off as more of a little bit of back testing to be used in conjunction with other charts where we discuss patterns before it's making a move. Now I'd say importantly leading into this as the stock was bottoming, see the MACD was making higher lows throughout this portion where it was holding a nice support around 55 cents, climbing a little bit more quickly back towards zero, which would be points to be watching it to see if it's going to make a sharper move, or like through here, if it's going to fall through a strong support, in which case we typically say fell through that support, walk away from it, wait for it to set up again, and in fact, that's what this chart did. Now a much bigger move, MACD moved quite high, as the stock peaked out, found a resistance, pulled back, held the zero mark, made another high, and then took off again. Those are things that we talk about a lot of times before this move happens. We're referencing, we want to see it hold zero, want to see another bullish cross come in, want to see the trend start to strengthen again to increase the likelihood of a breakout. Pretty similar look to the PPO, ADX, notice hit very low levels. That's where we start talking about looking for a sharper move to happen, because the ADX typically doesn't want to go and stay below 10. And as it so happens, that's when the bigger move came. Right now, money flow index, outside of some big whipsaws in the 7, essentially is held over top of 50, showing the price is regularly trading above its average prices. Sharp move downward in the accumulation distribution yesterday. That's because of a black candle. See, the stock didn't close anywhere near its high of the day. Clearly took on some selling once it peaked out. And although it closed higher than the day before, which was Wednesday, stock still closed lower on the day as compared to its opening price. And that'll usually reflect pretty hard in the accumulation distribution and Chaikin money flow, which measure those volumes of sells. CCI still well over top of 100. Of course, per the definition of that indicator, sell signal doesn't come until it breaks back down through 100. Full stoves moved up quickly, holding the upper half. That's what we always want to see. Any pullbacks, we want to see it hold over top of 50 as well to show that there's bullish momentum being sustained in the chart. And the tricks, just generally speaking, nice look, higher lows, holding over top of zero, signaling the trend remains bullish. Similarly, the RSI, probably the most commonly used gauge of momentum, very little time below 50, signaling that the bulls have essentially remained in charge of momentum ever since this move from the bottom. Now, a few other things I look for in this, I think it's notable, see the higher lows. And I will say that a top-end resistance is a little bit difficult to identify here because you can see how many long upper shadows there were, really at varying levels. So to just try and pick a spot and say, oh, I think the resistance point was right here, is really just a judgment call. I think right through that $1.50 range, though, it's pretty fair to say that that was a tough resistance spot. Every time the stock went above it, promptly pulled back down, didn't want to close above that level. I think dating back a little bit further going into last year, it's pretty clear that $1.40 was actually a resistance point as well. As a smaller part of this triangle right through here, you can see how the stock price was really getting pinned against that, forming a very tight pattern before it finally took off. Now with that, stock's obviously way up higher than those levels, closed at $1.92 on Thursday. I'd look for some support to try and come in right through Tuesday's closing price around $1.85, but I certainly wouldn't be shocked at all if some more support came in down around $1.70 if profit taking is going to continue after that big 3-day jump. One other thing I'd like to note about this ascending triangle pattern is the volume. Now it definitely had some spikes on the big move. You can see the spikes got lower. In general, volume was drying up on this stock, which is actually a good sign as it reaches the end of a pattern because it basically signals that people are just holding on to see what happens. So when you see an ascending triangle or any pattern of any type, as a matter of fact, you could call this a little cup and handle pattern if you wanted to zoom into just about a 3-month chart. Always look for volume levels to start to shrivel because it could be signaling that spring is coiling and a nice pop will follow. Now similarly, if it broke to the downside and broke out of that pattern, start to be a little bit cautious, look for new support levels to come into play, and go from there with the chart. Recognize the pattern as it's happening and look for that breakout. There's certainly price targets that come along with the height of an ascending triangle pattern. I'm not going to go into those right this second. Do some due diligence and find out how those are calculated. But point being of this video, Chart certainly looks bullish overall to continue with its upward trend, but what I really wanted to show was a nice little pattern that formed before the breakout this week. But going forward, if it wants to consolidate and pull back from the run, not that big of a deal. Look for it to establish a new support level at a higher level, and then over time, try and move upward again. Those are the things that I see in the BGMD chart, but as always, it's merely my interpretation. Thank you for watching. Trade smart.